Cassette players, by definition, are an obsolete piece of technology. CDs still have their purpose in providing a crisp audio sound, while vinyls serve a similar audiophilic function. Obviously, there's the whole vinyl aesthetic, but aside from that, there's an actual audiophile community that rallies around the supposed superiority of vinyl, which does have some truth to it. But in the grand scheme of this modern streaming age, both of these formats pale in comparison to the monolith that is streaming. It's easier than ever to just plug in earbuds and listen to whatever the heck you want in a matter of seconds. Cassette players, on the other hand, have a kind of lackluster sound quality in comparison to streaming. They're pretty bulky in comparison to one's phones. And come on, they require batteries in today's day and age? No, thank you. So when I initially started my experiment, I set out to answer this one question. In the present day, would it still be worth it to use one of the most seemingly obsolete pieces of technology in existence? I mean, judging from the video's title, yeah. Let me explain why. Over the course of the past month, I made kind of an effort to be more conscious about my social media usage, and I've just in general taken a backseat to the abrasiveness of the internet. Somewhat. I'm still on Twitter every now and then. Oh my god, Twitter is such a hellhole. But that being said, while I still love streaming new music that I don't own physically, even then, I'm trying to reduce the amount of streaming I do until it hopefully becomes zero or close to it. As I've shifted to the more analog form of experiencing music, I've noticed a few phenomena that just keep drawing me back to the experience time and time again. In this process, I've learned various things about myself, my listening habits, and the art of music in general. The first thing I noticed from buying used cassettes is that listening to music becomes a whole lot more conscious in general because of that small investment of money. I mean, if you spend $4 on a tape, chances are you're gonna listen to it. And you're not buying Eric B. and Rakim's Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em because it's their best album. Spoiler, that title goes to Paid in Full, which came out 3 years prior, but that's a different discussion. You're getting this cassette because you want to experience a piece of music from a different time period on a relic from that era. And this feeling is really, really cool. Some days I'll do errands or just take a walk without my phone just so I can take a break from all the notifications of my life. And I'll just be myself and my Walkman with whatever cassette I have. So in a way, I guess I'm letting the rhythm hit me. There's also this certain experience one has when obtaining cassettes. In most cases, I'll go to a local record shop and browse the aisles for an artist I only have an inkling of an idea about. As a result of this, I'm able to expand my music taste because I don't have a complex algorithm trying to tailor content for my tastes. In other words, I'm an objective bystander to all these awesome cassettes from various eras, various genres, and all kinds of different artists. By choosing to buy something I've never listened to, I'm able to expand my palette into a whole nother world of music I never even knew existed. This is how I was able to get into George Benson, as crazy as it sounds, because I really love his work as a jazz guitarist, and being able to hear so many of his albums on cassettes really opened up my world of jazz guitar, even though I still suck at playing the riff from Reason. Now, obviously, there are far easier ways of listening to old music that don't involve spending $2 on a cassette that will eventually deteriorate, but nothing can replace this physical touch that you get with physical media. It's kind of the same reason as to why we collect physical books or magazines, because they're tangible and we can own them forever. And I know that this might seem like a kind of weird thing to say, but cassettes specifically are almost kind of intimate in the way that they hold you so closely to the artist. You're listening to a masterpiece of music that fits into a cassette in the palm of your hand, and you can feel the Walkman spin as it's playing it. But cassettes eventually reached the end of their life, and with the release of CDs, during the 90s, we saw cassette sales start to decrease until they were virtually non-existent in the 2000s. And I guess it makes sense, considering that the sound quality of cassettes are inferior to that of CDs, their filament will eventually wear out. But despite all this, my question now shifts to something about new artists. Why would you listen to a new artist's album on a cassette? And I think the best way to answer that would be with the artist's intention. Particular albums are created either with a low fidelity concept or they're just best enjoyed in an environment where there aren't high-end fancy speakers. I know that this seems really weird considering the whole point of vinyl and CD in the modern age is to provide a way to experience the most lossless way of listening to music, but cassettes are the exact opposite of that, and they still work for that expectation, if that makes sense. What I'm getting at is that the whole point of listening to new music on cassettes is to experience these pieces of art in a low fidelity environment. I mean the signals can be more obvious. The people on r/vinyl are some of the most pretentious music critics I've ever come across, while the people in r/cassette heads would probably ship you a pie if you asked them to. I think that's someone that demonstrates this concept of new music on old hardware really well is the folk singer Adrienne Lenker of Big Thief. Back in 2020, she released 2 albums at the same time, songs and instrumentals. These releases were done at a time when everyone was stuck inside and isolated. Listening to these stripped down tracks that contain mostly guitars and chimes on a low fidelity equipment like a Walkman, complete with hisses and background noise, immerses me into an environment that Adrienne created that something like vinyl can never do because it sounds so good. The same goes for folk artists like Leonard Cohen or shoegaze adjacent artists like Always. Does it sound good? I mean, relatively, yeah. Comparatively to something like vinyl, no. But that's the appeal of having music on cassettes. That being said, there's some albums I would never get on cassette. Examples include anything by Kendrick Lamar or Charlie XCX, because both of these artists feature production that would require me to get the most out of it. So as a result, I'd probably listen to this on something like a vinyl player or my streaming service. I mean, Charlie XCX, that's like literally the whole thing behind her music, but that's another topic for another day. Remind me to do a video about Charlie at some point in the future. I would be thrilled to. The point I'm getting at is that certain artists have albums that are phenomenal to listen to on cassette because the medium by which these albums are played enhances the content that's found on the albums. So in addition to all this, I'm just going to be perfectly honest, but cassettes are really nice eye candy to just have thrown around your house, especially if the artwork's pretty. Like my entire office is just decorated with cassettes. But the final thing I want to close with my cassette discussion is just this general idea that listening to cassettes has made me a more conscious music listener. Instead of picking something that's on my Apple Music home screen, I'm actively loading in an album I selected for my music collection. There's just something so special about hearing your favorite sounds come out of this little device that you can hold in your hand. And I know the same can be said about your phone, but like you can't feel the vibrations on your phone, so checkmate. And the same thing obviously goes for vinyl. I think it's completely insane that like little grooves can produce such awesome sound quality, but it's especially true for cassettes, which are very underrated. And I think the best part about collecting cassettes is that the stuff's pretty cheap for the most part nowadays. I mean, obviously you can buy like high-end cassette players, but honestly, I'm using an original Walkman that had never been opened, and it's just really plain old fun to listen to albums on here. I think what keeps drawing me back to cassettes, at least, is just like this idea of having physical media that's portable. That's why I still collect books, because there's one thing about reading a book on a device, there's another thing about holding a book in your hand. And the same thing is applicable to music, especially cassettes. So yeah, you should get cassettes, not because I told you to, but because they're just so much fun to play around with and experience the joy of hearing crackling in your music. I love it. Go for it. Anyway, yeah, that's it for today. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.